Hilchos Maaseh Hakorbanos Perek Chamishi, the laws of sacrificial procedures, chapter 5. We're recording this chapter early. Tomorrow is Tisha B'Av, it's the 9th of Av. We're not supposed to learn most of Torah because Torah makes us happy, and Tisha B'Av is a day of mourning. We mourn many, many sad things that happened in our history. In 1984, when the Rebbe came out with the takana, with the enactment to learn Rambam every day, they asked the Rebbe what should be done about Tisha B'Av. And the Rebbe said ideally one should study the chapter of Rambam for Tisha B'Av after the fast. So ideally, if we could record it after the fast, we would do so. However, as we know in Shul, people are going to be running away right after the fast, so I'm recording this early on the 8th of Av. And I'm on a little bit of a time constraint because the law which prohibits us from studying Torah on Tisha B'Av actually begins on midday before Tisha B'Av, midday today. Not 12 o'clock, halachic midday, which is about 1 o'clock today, and it's about 12:15 now when we're recording. So in order to be able to finish the chapter and to do a little editing before we put it up on YouTube, so that those that have Tisha B'Av come out early can benefit from it earlier, we'll have to pick up the pace a little bit, so bear with me, and we'll get through this chapter. It's a little bit longer at least than the ones we've had in the last couple of days, but nevertheless very fundamental, and it again is a general chapter that relates to all sacrifices. The Rambam is going to go into the details of every single category of sacrifice, but first spends a couple of chapters talking about the rules that pertain to all sacrifices. And this is another such example. We're going to talk about the slaughtering of sacrifices, all the different types, the sprinkling. There was a special law of how to sprinkle the blood of each and every sacrifice, and also what is to be done with the hides, with the skin of the different sacrifices. That's basically the topic that we have for today. The Rambam begins, Halacha Aleph, Kvar Be'arnu, we already explained, Sheshchitas HaKadashim Ksheira Bezarim, that slaughtering holy sacrifices is permitted to be done by a non-Kohen. Usually, a non-Kohen cannot be involved in any service in the temple, but slaughtering sacrifices is allowed. Only from the receiving of the blood, which we discussed at length yesterday, only from there on out is it a mitzvah to have only Kohanim deal with. As you can see in the pictures over here, this is supposed to be from a Passover sacrifice. The regular Jew, not dressed as a Kohen, he's going to slaughter the sacrifice. Once the slaughtering is completed and the blood has to be received, that the Kohanim are doing. All sacrifices, kibul daman b'klisharis biad kayin. The law is that the blood has to be received in a holy utensil by the hand of a Kohen. Aval mekayim shchitasan umekayim kibul daman eine shave bekulan. While these rules apply to all sacrifices, anybody can slaughter it, and the Kohen has to receive it. Where you slaughter it in the temple and where you receive the blood is not equal by all sacrifices. And much of what we're about to say, you may be familiar with from the morning prayers. Before Hodu, we say the chapter of Ezehu Mekayman from the Mishnah, Zvachim chapter 5, and that is exactly the subject dealt with in that chapter. Ezehu Mekayman shel Zvachim. What is the placement where we slaughter the different sacrifices? Says the Rambam Ketzad, how exactly are the details over here? Kodshe Kodashim. If we're dealing with the holiest of holy sacrifices, we said yesterday, that's the burnt offering, many of them, the sin offering, the guilt offering. Ein sheichat enoisan, ve'ein mekablin es daman. The only place where it's permitted to slaughter them and to receive their blood is Ella bitzvayna mizbeach, on the north of the mizbeach. When we say north, we refer to the place that we discussed its borders in the beginning of this book. When the Rambam delineated the structure of the temple, he told us that the mizbeach is situated in the south side of the temple courtyard. From the edge of the Mizbeach all the way to the northern wall of the temple courtyard, anywhere in this square is called the Tzafain, the north area, and this is where we can slaughter any holiest of holy sacrifices, and also where you receive the blood. The Kadashim Kalim, whereas the lighter sacrifices, a peace offering, a thanksgiving offering, the Passover offering, Shchitasam v'kibul daman b'chol makam min ha'azara, their slaughtering and the receiving of their blood can be done in any place in the temple courtyard. In other words, we extend all the way to here, even around the temple structure, even in the back here. Any place that's called temple courtyard is allowed to have it slaughtered or receive the blood there. Uminayin, how do we know? Says the Rambam, shein shechatin kadshe kadashim ela batzafin, that when it comes to the holiest of holy sacrifices, we can only slaughter them in the north. Says the Rambam, I'm going to bring you a series of verses, one verse from each of the holy sacrifices. By the burnt offering, it says, this is the clearest verse. You should slaughter it on the northern side of the mizbeach. There it is. And now everything else follows in succession. By the sin offering, what does it say? In the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered, so should the sin offering be slaughtered, i.e., in the north. Ukeshem sha'achatos nikras kodesh kadashim, kacha'olam nikras kodesh kadashim. The same way the sin offering is called Holy of Holies, so to the burnt offering is called Holy of Holies. So from there we derive that both of them are Holy of Holies, have to be slaughtered in the north. Also by the guilt offering it says, again, in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered, so should the guilt offering be slaughtered. And then we have the final Holy of Holy sacrifices, which is called the Shalmei Tzibur. Shalmei Tzibur are the only time the community brought a peace offering on Shavuos. And here, how do we know they're slaughtered on the north? It says the Rambam b'Shalmei Tzibur hukshu lechatas. In the verse, the communal peace offering is juxtaposed compared to a sin offering. Shenemar, as it says when talking about the sacrifices brought on Shavuos, va'asisem sir izim echad lechatas, you shall perform one young goat as a sin offering, u'shnei kvasim b'nei shana lezavach shlamim, and 2-year-old rams for the peace offering. Lefichach, therefore, because it puts it together, hein kache kadashim kechatas, they're considered holy of holy sacrifices like a sin offering, v'nishchatin bimkaim shchitasa, and they're also to be slaughtered in the place where the chatas is slaughtered, i.e. in the north. All these cases, all these verses say slaughtering. Why are we saying slaughtering and receiving the blood? Because that's the rule. Wherever you slaughter the animal, that's where you receive the blood. Of course, that's what makes sense. You slaughter it, you're receiving the blood right there. How do we know that you can slaughter the lighter sacrifices? Everywhere in the temple courtyard, even behind the temple structure. Because by a regular peace offering it says, you must slaughter it at the entrance to the tent of meeting, which makes kosher all directions. Because there's no direction says here. It doesn't say in the east, in the north, in the south, and the west. And from Shlomim we learn to all other later sacrifices that they can be slaughtered anywhere in the temple courtyard, even if you would bring them into the temple structure itself and slaughter them there, that would be kosher. But if you would slaughter them on the roof of the heichal, psulim, they're disqualified. Roofs didn't become holy, as the Rambam told us in the beginning of this book. No slaughtering can be done there, only on the ground level. Halacha hey, we're going to learn later on when the Rambam describes the daily order of the temple service that one of the stages in the morning was to open up the doorway that went into the heichal, into the temple structure. They opened it up from the inside, and they would open the larger doors. It says the Rambam, Shlomim sheshchatan kedem sheyipaschu dal seis ha'heichal. If you were to slaughter a peace offering before the opening of the gates, or the doorway of the heichal, psulin, they're disqualified. Shenemar, from the very same verse, it says Pesach oyel mayid. It has to be slaughtered at the entrance to the tent of meeting, but the word Pesach also means open, bisman shepasuach, which means that slaughtering is only kosher at a time when the doors are open. Afilu hayu dal seisav mugafais. Even if the doors were closed but not locked, hareza kenol, it's like it's locked. But if there's a curtain in the way, but the door is not closed, that doesn't disqualify it. The doors have to be open even if there's a curtain in the way. Halacha vav. Moving on now to the laws of sprinkling the blood. Ha'oila v'ha'asham v'hashlamim. Burnt offering, guilt offering, and peace offerings. Bein shel yachid, bein shel tzibur, whether individual or communal. Zrikas dam shloshtan. Al gabe hamizbeach shava lo'ilam. The way you sprinkle all 3 of their bloods on the mizbeach is equal, always equal, always done the same way. The ketzadu oiseh, how is it done? K'shelekeach hakoyin hadam b'mizrak. When the kohen takes the blood in a little bowl or in a little basin, v'zoyrek mimenu b'mizrak shtei zrikos, he should sprinkle with it, with the basin, 2 sprinkles al shtei zavies hamizbeach ba'alachzain, on 2 diagonally across corners of the Mizbeach, Mechatze HaMizbeach Ulamata, on the lower half of the Mizbeach. We'll get into this more, but I think I already told you in the beginning of this book that there was a red line that ran across the Mizbeach. That's the midpoint. Some sacrifices, blood has to be sprinkled on the bottom half. Some sacrifices, blood on the top half. Here we're talking about the ones that are on the bottom half. And therefore the Kohen would come up to the corner, and he would sprinkle it on the corner, this one and the one diagonally opposite it. And that's how the sprinkling would be done. Al keren mizrachis tzvainis, val keren ma'aravis draimis. On the northeastern corner and on the southwestern corner. Just to use that picture again to show which we were talking about. This is, you're facing kind of the entrance to the heichal that's facing west. So this is west, this is south. So that would be the southwestern corner, and that would be the northeastern corner. These 2 corners were the ones where the blood was sprinkled. And the Kohen has to intend when he sprinkles the blood onto the corner, that the blood should splash onto the corners and make the shape of a gam, which is a Greek letter that resembles our L. So that's how you see it over here. Kind of you sprinkle it on the corner and it's going to splash both ways. So that it will turn out that when you just sprinkle twice the blood, it'll end up on the four walls of the Mizbeach. By sprinkling it on this corner, you get two walls. You go diagonally across and you do another splash on the corner which goes to the two walls. You now have covered four walls. And the reason we do this, because by the oila and by the shlamim, both cases it says the word saviv, which means around. You sprinkle the blood all around. And from tradition we interpret this, doesn't mean you have to take the blood and walk around the Mizbeach, make a whole thing all around. It means you have to cover all the walls. And by doing a minimum of 2 sprinkles, you cover all the walls. Even though the word saviv is only stated by oila and by a shlamim, we learn that the same applies to a guilt offering. And whatever remains is poured down onto the southern base of the Mizbeach. We remember that the Mizbeach had a base. Here's the base, but it only ran on 2 sides, on the south side and on the west side. It didn't run on the north side and on the east side. And depends on which opinion you follow, but at one point of the base there were 2 holes. One that was facing to the south, one that was facing to the west. Here the Rambam was referring to the southern one. In this picture, for some reason, only one hole. But let's just say there was another hole over here. That would be the western one. This is the southern one. You would pour the blood, the leftover blood, into the southern one. So that covers the sprinkling of the blood's laws as it relates to the oila, the asham, and the shlamim, the burnt offering, guilt offering, peace offering. Halacha zayin hachatois. What happens when it comes to the sin offerings? There's a whole other spiel on how you sprinkle their blood. Hachatois hane'echolei, says the Rambam, the sin offerings that would be eaten, because there was 2 types. Some would be eaten, some would be burnt. So the eaten ones, damon ton arba matones, al arba karnes hamizbeach achitzain, mechatze hamizbeach ulamaila. Their blood required, first of all, 4 sprinklings, not 2, like when it came to the other ones, on the 4 corners of the mizbeach, the outer one, not just 2, on the upper half. So going back to this picture, not on the half under the red line, but on the half above the red line. The reason being, lefi shenemar ba, because the Torah clearly says, al karnes hamizbeach. You have to put the blood, not around, which could be the minimum of 2, on every corner of the Mizbeach. So what do you do? How do you do it? When the Kohen receives the blood in the basin, he brings it to the altar. And he dips his right index finger, the one next to the thumb, into the blood. And he brings his fingers, his index finger on one side and the thumb on the other side, to the corner. And he sprinkles and kind of brings it down. As you see over here, he brings down the blood opposite the sharp corner of the Mizbeach, of the corner, until all the blood on his finger is finished. And so he does on every corner. If you didn't put it directly on the corner, you put it about an amma away, within a foot and a half from the corner on each side, kippur, you have achieved atonement. That's still called the corner area because the actual corner protrusion on the Mizbeach went out for an amma on each side. So technically speaking, you're on the corner. Even if your finger's super dirty, super bloody, you have to re-dip it for every corner. And when you finish the application to one corner, clean your finger on the edge of the basin. And then you go dip it a second time for the second corner. Because whatever remains from blood on your finger is forbidden, it's disqualified from using on another corner. There is no sacrifice among all the sacrifices which requires sprinkling of the blood by the finger, only the sin offering. All the other ones, you took the basin and you sprinkled from the basin. Here you put your finger in and applied it with your finger. As it says in the sin offering, about the sin offering, v'toval etzboi badam. It's not in a row, as you can see it over here. V'toval, he dips the kohen, his finger in the blood. And therefore there has to be enough blood to be dippable, immersible. You're not sponging your finger with blood. There has to be enough that you're dipping it in, it's getting full of blood. You got to do the 4 corners. Which corner do you start with? So the Rambam uses a description. You go up the ramp. And you turn right. Now you turn right means you turn right on the small ramp over here, because you got to get to the walkway that goes around the Mizbeach. If you take this ramp up, you reach the top. No good. You turn to the right over here. And you walk on the soivev, on the walkway that surrounds the Mizbeach. And you begin with the southeastern corner, which is this one right over here. Then you follow to the closest corner to it, which is the northeastern corner. Then you keep going to the next one over here, which is northwest. Then the fourth corner closest to it, which is the southwestern corner. And at the base of that corner where you finish the applications, that's where you pour the remainder of the blood, as it says, all the blood you shall pour at the base of the Mizbeach where you did the burnt offerings. Which is again the southern one, as I show you in this picture over here, the southern hole. Halacha Yud Aleph, the last couple of halachas we're talking about what we do with sprinkling the sin offerings that were eaten. What about the ones that were burnt? Says the Rambam, all the sin offerings that were burnt, damam nichnas lifnim laheichal. They had a special procedure. Their blood was actually taken inside the temple structure. And we sprinkle there as is explicitly stated in the Torah. And we'll soon get a description of this. And the leftover blood was poured on the western base of the outer Mizbeach, which you meet first when exiting the Heichal, the temple structure. You came to the western hole that was closer to the actual structure of a temple on the west side. Halacha Yud Beis. Let's get some detail. The Heichan mazin midaman v'kama maza mehem. Where do you sprinkle their blood? How much do you sprinkle? So the bull and the goat of Yom Kippur that were both burned, dam kol echad mehen, the blood of each of them, ton shmeina hazoyos al bein abadim, required to be sprinkled 8 times inside the Holy of Holies between the poles of the Holy Ark. Ushmein ala pareches, and 8 additional ones you would walk outside onto the curtain between the Holy and the Holy of Holies. Then, after sprinkling each one in this manner, he would mix the blood of the bull and the goat. And from the combination of them both, he would sprinkle 4 times on the 4 corners of the inner Mizbeach, the small incense altar inside the Heichal. And besides for the 4 on the 4 corners, he would do 7 onto the middle of the Mizbeach. As will be explained towards the end of this book in the laws of the service of the temple on Yom Kippur. If you weren't exact about the amount of sprinkles that were done inside the temple structure, it's okay. The bulls, the communal bulls that were burnt, and the communal goats that were burnt in case of erroneous rulings issued by the court. These were also a sin offering that was burnt. He did not 8, but 7 sprinklings on the curtain that was dividing between the Holy and the Holy of Holies, as in this picture. This is on Yom Kippur, but you do it also during the rest of the year 7 times. The arba hazoyos, la arba karnes mizbach hazav, as well as also 4 times sprinkling on the 4 corners of the incense altar. When you apply blood to the incense altar, when you would enter, you would stand, kind of go further in and stand between this mizbeach and the menorah which was further in. With the mizbeach towards your front, in front of you. You would apply the blood on the outer side of the corners of this mizbeach. Beginning with the northeastern corner. To the northwestern corner. To the southwestern corner. To the southeastern corner. When the Kohen Gadol himself had to bring a bull for ruling erroneously about another mitzvah, the Kohen Gadol himself needs to receive the blood, catch the blood after the slaughtering, and do the sprinkling on the inside of the temple, as is described in the Torah. If a regular Kohen did it, after the fact it's kosher. The goats that are brought communally for an erroneous ruling issued in connection to Avodah Zarah, to idol worship, these are the goats that are burnt, referenced before. Truth is, even though I told you before that we follow the same procedure for the bulls, but it doesn't say in the Torah how you're supposed to apply the blood and where you put it. Because they're a communal sin offering, dinan kidin par helim, they have the same laws as the laws of the bull for the erroneous ruling, which is also a communal sin offering, in all matters. For application of the blood, for having it burnt, and actually for a special law that applies where the person that burns them becomes ritually impure, as we'll describe later in detail. Halacha Yud Zayin haBecher v'haMaaser v'haPesach. Firstborn offering, tithe offerings, Passover offerings. They usually come together for all laws. Dam kol echad mihen, their blood, in terms of sprinkling, ton matana achas. Doesn't need 4 applications, doesn't need 2, 1 application, bishvicha. And it's actually done not in a sprinkling manner, but in a pouring manner. You simply poured it out, keneged haYesod, near the base of the Mizbeach, be'ezer ruach sheyirtzeh, mishalesh zaviyas haMizbeach, at any of the 3 corners where the base extended to. As we explained, the southeastern corner didn't have a Yesod. It went across only 2 sides really, but it ate into this side as well. So technically speaking, this corner, and the corner back here all had a Yesod, not that one, the southeastern corner. But you could put it anywhere on the base. What is the source? How do we know that they only require 1 application? Remember, by the firstborn it says, "As damam tizrek al mizbeach," their blood you should sprinkle on the mizbeach. From tradition we learn, shehu adin b'maiser b'pesach. Here it says only 1 sprinkle. Sprinkle it once, and the same applies to the tithe offering and to the Passover offering. Shanaisen damam matana achas kabecher. You only do 1 sprinkling like the firstborn offering. And now we've covered slaughtering, we've covered sprinkling of the blood. We move to the next step. Kol azvachim, all sacrifices, maktirne mureyan al gabe mizbeach. Ultimately, we're going to offer some of their parts on the Mizbeach, as you can see over here. Achar shezerkin adam tchila, but the haktara, the offering, is always done after sprinkling the blood. Additionally, v'chol azvachim, all sacrifices, mafshitin oisan, you first skin the hides, as you can see over here. V'achar kach meitzin asay morein, and only then take out the parts that are going to go on the Mizbeach. Ve'in mafshitin oisan at she'izar kadam, and this skinning also has to be done only after the sprinkling of the blood. Except for the burnt sin offerings, which aren't skinned at all. As it says, in my Rambam we have as oiram, but in the Torah it says as oiroisam. The as besaram, their hides and their flesh is all burnt. From this you learn that the order usually is sprinkle the blood first, then skin it, tear it open, remove the parts that are going to be offered on the Mizbeach and actually offer them. Halacha Yutes. Now that you've skinned the sacrifice, what do you do with the hides? All the skins, all the hides of the holiest of holy sacrifices, the burnt offering, sin offering, guilt offering, communal peace offering, go to the Kohanim. Bein Hakorbanos tzibur, bein Hakorbanos yachid, whether individual or communal sacrifices. Shenemar, as it says, Oyir ha'oila asher hikriv, the skin of the burnt offering which he has offered. The verse continues, La koyin la yiyah, it goes to the kohen. Avoledes kachim kalim la bailim. But the skins of the lighter sacrifices, peace offering, thanksgiving offering, personal offerings, go to the owner. Also, anytime a burnt offering doesn't end up getting offered on the Mizbeach, for whatever reason, disqualified, the Kohanim don't get the hides. Because it says, Oilas ish, it has to be a burnt offering belonging to a person, Oila she'olsa leish. If the burnt offering counts for the person, i.e. because it's brought on the Mizbeach and achieves atonement, and the Kohen walks home with the hide. If the guy didn't get his atonement, the Kohen doesn't walk home with the hide. Any of the holiest of holy sacrifices, that a disqualification happened to them before the skinning, their hides also don't go to the Kohanim. But if it's after the skinning, the hides do go to the Kohanim. It wasn't on a case-by-case basis. You took all the hides, they would accumulate all week, and on Friday, everybody who was in the weekly watch would divide all the hides. It was divided proportionally among the Kohanim. If somebody designates a burnt offering, but he says it's not for the Mizbeach, it's for the temple upkeep funds. Where a person consecrates all his property and there were male animals there, where the law is they must be offered as burnt offerings, but in a different way than a regular burnt offering. Their hides don't go to the Kohanim. It says it has to be a burnt offering belonging to a man, that excludes a burnt offering which initially belonged to the temple treasury, and now you're bringing it, doesn't go to the hides, don't go to the Kohanim. You sell the skins, and they also go to the temple treasury. Now don't be misled by the word ish, that it only means man, whether brought by a man or a woman or a Gentile or a slave. The hides go to the Kohanim. The only reason the word man is used is to exclude the temple treasury. Regular person as opposed to the temple treasury. But in regular person itself, no matter who you are, the hides of your burnt offering go to the Kohanim.